We won't survive if we have an educational system and a culture that says, we're bad, we're terrible, we're the worst ever.
Welcome to Real Talk English. We're going to start today with a huge question, one that's fascinated people for centuries. Why did Rome fall?
And that's what the Romans lose. And as I said, they can survive without that until really bad times come, and really bad times came. And then they were shooting blanks.
But here's the real kicker. Are we seeing those same warning signs right now in our own world?
I would say we have these warning signs today. When you have a society in which the concept of citizenship fades, when you have a society in which in an earlier generation, young people were taught civics as they were in the United States, but now they're not taught it anymore.
Could our own success actually be setting us up for a massive fall? Well, to get some answers, we're going to dig into the work of a historian who sees some parallels that are, frankly, a little unnerving.
They have no idea what they're talking about.
Yes.
But that's the road on which I think societies that give up believing in themselves, that's the danger that they're exposing themselves to.
It's really...
So, we'll be breaking down the arguments of historian Barry Strauss. And his analysis, wow, it offers some powerful and maybe even uncomfortable insights. And hey, while we're at it, we're going to learn 10 key English terms straight from his analysis to really help us nail down his argument.
Okay, so how does a superpower just crumble? According to Strauss, for Rome, it's kind of ironic. The seeds of its own destruction were actually planted in its biggest wins. And this quote, this one sentence from Strauss, really just hits the nail on the head. See, all that incredible wealth and power that Rome got from its conquests, it didn't just make it strong, it completely changed the fabric of its society, creating these brand new and ultimately fatal weaknesses from the inside out.
So here's the crazy paradox of Rome's success. On one hand, they were geniuses at co-opting their enemies, turning them into allies. But the absolute flood of money that came from that, it created this totally unscrupulous elite. We're talking about a ruling class with zero moral compass. Then you have their incredible army conquering the known world. But that led to an absolutely egregious, and we'll define that in a second, but think shockingly bad, slave society that just wiped out jobs for regular folks. You put all that success together, and what do you get? The perfect preconditions for 100 years of brutal civil war.
And let's lock in on that word, egregious. It's a great one. It doesn't just mean bad. It means outstandingly, shockingly bad. And that's exactly what Roman slavery was, just on a massive, empire-wide scale.
But out of all these problems, which one was the real killer? For Strauss, it all comes down to one thing, the decay of what it meant to be a citizen. This, he argues, was the real rot from within that made the whole thing destined to fall apart.
I mean, think about it. Way back in the day, when Hannibal and his elephants marched over the Alps and nearly wiped Rome off the map, they survived. How? How did they do that? Simple. They had this core of incredibly loyal citizens who were ready to die for their republic. They were able to weather the storm. And that's a fantastic idiom, by the way. To weather the storm just means to get through a really tough time. For Rome, that strength, that ability to survive, came straight from its people. And this is where you see the huge shift. See, early on, being a Roman citizen was all about responsibilities, military service, public duty, loyalty. But later on, an emperor decided to make everyone a citizen. And what did that do? It totally diluted the whole concept. It just watered it down. When being a citizen became a privilege everyone had instead of a duty a few were proud of, that special glue holding everyone together just disappeared.
So what happens when that social glue dissolves? Well, you get pure chaos. The infamous 3rd century crisis, that was a direct result of this internal rot. And the result was a society in an absolute nosedive. We're talking widespread plagues, insane inflation that made money worthless, and the political scene, it got so crazy that you had this revolving door of emperors. I mean, guys were getting assassinated after just a few months in power.
That phrase, revolving door, is perfect, isn't it? It captures that feeling of constant, chaotic change. It's a huge red flag that a system has lost all of its stability.
Now, it's really easy to just point a finger and say, oh, it was corruption that brought Rome down. And look, Strauss agrees. Corruption was endemic. It was basically everywhere, a part of the system. But he says that's just a symptom, not the actual disease. The real sickness was losing those social bonds, that shared idea of what it meant to be a Roman citizen. And this, right here, brings us to the million-dollar question. What can the fall of Rome teach us about our world right now? This is where we get to Strauss's big warning for the West.
The core lesson is this. When a society loses that sense of shared identity, that shared responsibility, it's just not resilient anymore. It becomes brittle, fragile. So when a real crisis hits, economic, political, whatever, it just doesn't have that collective spirit to bounce back.
Resilient. That's the key word. It's the ability to get knocked down and get right back up again. And in Strauss's view, a nation's resilience is built on one thing: a committed, engaged group of citizens. Okay, so if the real weakness is division on the inside, how would a modern enemy take advantage of that? Well, Strauss points to the ancient wisdom of the strategist Sun Tzu. You've probably heard this quote: "The greatest victory is getting your enemy to surrender without you fighting a blow."
And Strauss says that is the playbook for modern global conflict. Our adversaries don't need to launch a massive invasion. They can just work to subvert a nation from within. All they have to do is pour gasoline on the social and political fires that are already burning until the country literally tears itself apart.
And that's what subvert means: to undermine a system from the inside. It's a strategy that's pretty brilliant, in a scary way. It turns a country's own internal divisions into the very weapons that bring it down. All right, so we've walked through Rome's collapse with Barry Strauss as our guide. What are the big takeaways? What should we really remember from all this? Okay, let's break it down. First, Strauss's core idea. Think of a strong, shared sense of citizenship as a society's immune system. It keeps it healthy. Second, his big warning. The number one threat isn't always the enemy outside your gates. It's the divisions inside that an enemy can use against you. And along the way, we've picked up some awesome vocabulary to talk about this stuff, like egregious, weather the storm, the revolving door, being resilient, and how to subvert a system.
So if this got you thinking, you should definitely go check out the full interview with Barry Strauss. Seriously, now that you've got the key words, the main expressions, and the core ideas down, watching the original is the perfect next step to take your listening and speaking skills to a whole new level.
And that kind of leaves us with one final pretty big thought, doesn't it? If a society's strength really does come from its citizens, what's our responsibility to each other? I'd love to know what you think, so drop a comment below. And hey, if you got something out of this breakdown, do us a huge favor and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for joining us.